you could say it this way. If you do these things, the nations that you're designed to be a priest to, that you're supposed to make me attractive to them so that they come over to your side, if you live just like them, that will never happen. And there are two kinds of impurity in the Levitical system. Since we're on Leviticus 26, I thought I'd throw this in. There's ritual impurity, and here you have a short list: childbirth, skin or scale disease, genital discharges, carcasses of certain animals, human corpses. These are things that if they happened to you, you became unclean. And then you would have to go through a procedure to become clean. And Leviticus will actually use phrases like, "it shall be forgiven you." Now the key to realize what's going on here is these are not moral offenses. These are all things that just happen to people. You can't help if you have if for the women it's your time of the month. Okay, that's a natural cycle, but it renders you ritually unclean. You cannot go onto sacred space. And there's a logic as to why. It has to do with blood and other bodily discharges and so on and so forth. You can't touch a corpse. You can't go in Yahweh's presence with a loss of blood because blood is the life force. Yahweh is associated with life. Loss of blood is associated with death or non-life or unlife, and so you can't occupy sacred space in that condition. You have to wait a certain period, do a certain thing, then you can come back. Same thing with touching a corpse. Yahweh is associated with life, not death. You touched a corpse, you're ritually contaminated, you can't go in sacred space. Again, there's a logic to all these things. That it was a little foreign to us, but it would have been familiar to them just to illustrate the difference between the God of life and every other God, sacred space, every other space, all this sort of stuff. But these are things that, again, these are, you can't really do anything about these. Ritual impurity is natural. It is unavoidable for humans in human circumstances. And by the way, having purity laws like this reminds you of who you are. It reminds you that you're human. You are not deity. You have to be made fit for sacred space. It is not your natural domain. It should have been in Eden and someday will be, but you're human. You're separate from God. You're distanced. Okay, so ritual impurity doesn't arise from a moral violation. I have a little quote there from Clowen's article on idolatry, incest, and impurity. Moral defilement in ancient Judaism, Journal for the Study of Judaism there. What I want to get to here is the other side, the moral impurity. Moral impurity results from committing certain prohibited behaviors. And you can put these in three buckets: sexual transgressions, idolatry, and bloodshed. Frequently, these are all described as abominations. Those three things. They result in these judgments. The person who does such things, the land itself, and the sanctuary are either expelled or eliminated, like death penalty offenses. There was no ritual atonement for any of these things. Now, I want to click out to a verse here. This is Leviticus 18, and it's just gone through a grocery list of these moral violations, and it says this. Do these things, verse 28, lest the land vomit you out when you make it unclean, as it vomited out the nation that was before you. Okay? For everyone who does any of these abominations, the persons who do them shall be cut off from among their people. So keep my charge never to practice any of these abominable customs that were practiced before you, and never to make yourselves unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. In other words, these are things that people whose God isn't Yahweh do. Don't do them. And if you go up, we're not going to read the whole chapter here. A number of these are specifically connected to, again, other gods. Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, I am the Lord your God. You shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt, where you lived, and you shall not do as they do in the land of Canaan, to which I am bringing you. You shall not walk in their statutes. Okay. Again, you could read the whole chapter, and it's not a unique chapter. There are certain things, certain practices that were viewed as moral violations, specifically because of their association with idolatrous people. You could say it this way: if you do these things, the nations that you're designed to be a priest to, that you're supposed to make me attractive to them so that they come over to your side, if you live just like them, that will never happen. In fact, people could confuse you with one of them. So don't do those things. Ritual, again, there was ritual impurity. Here's a little slide that sort of puts it in a chart, and moral impurity. One are things you cannot avoid. The other ones you can avoid, and you should, because of their connection to people who don't worship Yahweh, to idolatry, other religious systems, just general chaos, bloodshed. Isn't it an interesting list? Okay, we've got sexual transgressions, idolatry, and bloodshed. Where have we seen those three things before? It's the sin of the watchers. Okay, it's the Genesis 6 stuff. Okay, that's where we've seen those things before. Again, it all in some way funnels back into this notion that there's the Edenic framework. There's Yahweh as God, wanting you as his family, wanting you as his partner, and then there is everything that is anti-Eden. And this is the way anti-Eden displays itself. This is what characterizes anti-Eden. When I bring you to the land, this ain't going to be anti-Eden. The very reason that it exists is to sort of be a new installment toward regaining Eden. So again, there is an overarching theological logic that is tied to the rebellion circumstances of Genesis 1 through 11 that ripples through the Old Testament and the New. But we'll get to the New Testament a little bit later on with some specifics.